What is this?
Oh,
Ice driving.
Do I need to put mine on then?
That's quite a cool hat, Kev. Yeah.
It's 30 years old, that. First time I ever went to Sweden. 89, I think. Yeah, 89.
welcome to this episode of Positive Motorsport Podcast. It's the Sweden special, Ice Drive Sweden, with Conor Flynn and our guest asking the questions on this occasion, Bob Irvine, up from the cold north, up in Scotland. Okay, first of all, guys, say hello and just quickly say who you are.
Conor.
Hi, I'm Conor Flynn. I run a business called Ice Drive Sweden, which is basically skidding around in cars on a frozen ice lake.
That sounds really good. My name is Bob Irvine and I do a lot of media work in the UK. And I wouldn't mind driving about a frozen lake. That sounds really good. Tell me a bit about this, guys. I'm really interested in this whole ice driving experience and that. We'll start with you, Kev. How did you, I mean, you're obviously an ex-works driver and stuff. How did you get into this venture of travelling across Europe and getting these amazing conditions to drive on?
In itself, I'm very proud to say myself and a couple of other people basically started this, what would you call it, almost industry of ice driving. I mean, obviously there were Scandinavians doing it for many years before us, but young British junior drivers going over to what you could say is a rally school, an ice driving school, that was unheard of in the late 80s. Nobody had really done it. And my friend Simon Davison, who was a works driver at the time for VW, and Warren Hunt, who was a works driver at the time for Skoda, and myself, we got together through the contact with the world famous and the legendary John Hoagland, who was teammates with Warren Hunt at the time. And Johnny had invited us over to Norway and said he could set up the opportunity for us to go and visit Anders Kulang's driving school. So us three went over representing the young Brits, and there were some drivers from Sweden and Norway, and we all got on great, and we did this ice driving experience, which was unbelievably good. Having the experience to sit alongside John Hoagland on ice and snow was unbelievably good. And myself, Warren and Simon spent 5 days non-stop driving in the same car, competing against each other, learning from Johnny all about ice driving, driving on snow, and understanding the balance of a car. And I think what's really important here is that we were all champions at the time. I wasn't a works driver then, but I won the Astra Challenge. I was about to do the Peugeot Challenge. I was good friends with Warren and Simon. So as buddies, we went out there and learned a lot. And that experience really transformed everything in my rallying career, not just because of the ice driving itself, but the companionship of sharing a car together and learning new things together. And jump forward a couple of years then. I was then doing the Peugeot Challenge, doing pretty good at it. I was a professional instructor, a rally instructor. So I decided that it would be a great thing if we, in the spirit of the communal side of the original Peugeot Challenge created by Desidel, that wouldn't it be a good idea to take junior drivers that were doing the Peugeot Challenge out there as a group of drivers to learn from, the God himself, John Hoagland. John didn't formally have a school in order to invite us to, but he did have the opportunity to facilitate things like ice lakes and great experiences. So basically, I set up this little school, for want of a better description, persuaded Desidel and the sponsors like Shell that it'd be a great idea to pay for us Peugeot juniors to go out there and train. And therefore, at the end of that year, I took a bunch of junior drivers from the Peugeot Challenge to go and learn about ice driving. And I'll show you a photo now of who some of those drivers were. So as we can see on screen, I'm really proud to say that's myself as lead instructor next to John Hoagland, his direct apprentice. And then just behind him, we have an illustrious list of drivers that came out to enjoy the experience. Top right, we've got Johnny Milner. I have so many photos, I can't go through everybody's name here, but certainly we've got Johnny Milner, we've got Mark Higgins and Alistair McRae, Steve Wedgbury. I think that's Steve Bennett there as well. But anyway, Alistair McRae, a young whippet that he was at the time. I'll pick a few more photos. Yeah. This has moved on 1 year, and by now I'm the winner of the Peugeot Challenge, and I've got a young driver with me who's the winner of the Junior Peugeot Challenge, a young Richard Burns, top left. So I'll just zoom into Richard. So there's young 17-year-old Richard. The guy next to him on his left-hand side is actually called Mark Williams, and that's James Williams' dad. Steve Bennett, Barbara Armstrong, Julian Reynolds, top right, Paul Franklin down at the front with Johnny Milner. By then, myself, Paul Franklin and Johnny Milner were teammates. And then the granddaddy of it all, John Hoagland on the right. It's a fascinating photo for me. And in these photos that I've just shown, we're basically looking at two world champions in the making. And really significantly, I can't find or I can't think of many other scenarios where three works drivers, myself, Paul Franklin and Johnny Milner, were working together, helping each other learn, learning from a great tutor and spending a full week with each other inside a car, 8 hours a day, and massively accelerating our learning.
I think the sport in general owes a lot to Des O'Dell for allowing that to happen, Kev.
Something I'm particularly proud of at the time of when I was tutoring and really formulating this whole concept of drivers coming together for advanced tuition and an experience of a lifetime, is that I actually wrote a full page for Motoring News. And the Motoring News review that I'm zooming into now does remind me to talk about Des O'Dell because it was his money that paid for us all to go. But this article's written by me, and the review of it is me saying what I thought of Richard Burns at the time, because he shared the car with me. So I had the full week with Richard on that occasion.
Did you say that you thought he wasn't going to go anywhere in the sport?
Obviously really good. I'll tell you one story in a sec because it's a good summary of what goes on. But obviously he's in comparison with other good drivers. Paul Franklin's there is massively rate Paul Franklin. I rate myself, Steve Bennett, Mark Williams, we're all great drivers. So, and Johnny Milner, with a comparison with drivers of that caliber. In actual fact, a lot of people, over the years said to me, why did you ever give up driving, especially when you were as good, if not better than some of the, drivers that became world champion at the time. And actually, what I can say is when I was with those drivers, I was more experienced. I'd done more ice driving. And a bit like if you're a ski instructor, if you've just 2 weeks more experience than somebody else, you appear to be able to do things that they can't do. But if they've done 2 weeks or 2 months, or they get the same experience as you, then you start to see the difference in your skill levels. So at that point, I was way more experienced than everybody else. But what I could see within the group was the potential for learning. And I could certainly see with Richard Burns that his learning for a 17-year-old was beyond probably what I was capable of. And therefore, when I checked it with the other drivers around me, I kept thinking, God, all the drivers that I've been taking out to this ice leg, they're all at least as good as me. So therefore, I'm not very special because we just happen to be, 6 or 12 people that I've ever taken to the ice lake, and they're all brilliant. Little did I know that we've got multiple British champions in that bunch and 2 world champions that I'm comparing myself against. But yeah, I can tell you 1,000,001 stories.
Okay.
So fire away.
Well, we'll get into the we'll get into the details in a while, but I'd like to ask you, Conor, how did you get involved in the ice driving?
I was 10 or 11 years old. Obviously, my dad ran the Tour 5 BMW Championship alongside Kev, who obviously run the Tour 5 1.9 version. And I think Dad come in one morning and asked me if I wanted to go to Sweden to drive on ice. And pretty much the rest is history now. So my first experience of it was me, Dad and Kev going down an old WRC stage to get to the lake and arriving. Obviously, I'm 11 years old and not knowing what's going on really, just that it's cold and you can't stand up on it, never mind drive at 50, 60 miles an hour, which is what happens. You get out the car, you fall over, but suddenly you can make a car turn in to a 90 left at 40 miles an hour on sheet ice.
It's hard to comprehend. I mean, I've actually never been to the Swedish rally or anything like that, and just it's hard to comprehend when you're watching it. It really
Yeah.
is. People can't stand on it, but you can drive on it, you know. So you're
Yeah.
currently you own the ice driving school now, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah. So in Ice Drive
Was that
Sweden.
always the plan, Connor? You know, was it?
Probably not actually back then. I didn't really know what was happening. It was just a great thing that I did every week, every year for a week, went on holiday with everyone. Obviously, I was 11, 12, 13, 14. Everyone else had licenses and rallying currently, and I was just sort of tagging along and driving where I could. And then, yeah, and seen an opportunity to expand it and have like 40 rental cars we have this year, varying from Cayman S's, Evo rally cars, Subaru rally cars, a fleet of various 6-cylinder BMWs, Z4s, which everyone said I was balmy for buying a Z4 to go to somewhere that's -20 and have a roof down, but actually with a woolly hat on and a heated seat, the roof down's amazing. Yeah, so it's sort of turned into something that, yeah, I never probably thought it would do, and never thought that I'd sort of do 40 solid days on the ice with 40 cars available to rent out.
I mean, we're supposed to be in this cost of living crisis. How is trade? Is it quite good? You know?
Yeah, Corona was a bad thing that stopped us going that year, which is not just money wise. It's just when you're in Sweden, you feel like the world's amazing and there's no traffic jams you're sitting in. It's just everything's really nice and fun and easy. So yes, we missed the year for Corona, and then since then, to be fair, it's gone busier than I ever imagined. So I wouldn't say cost of living crisis is really affecting it that much, in my opinion.
What are people's impressions, Connor, when they get there? It's like we've just been talking about, you know, chucking a car about their speeds on ice. I mean,
Yeah,
they must be flabbergasted, some of them, you know, if they're not
yeah.
to be rally orientated.
Obviously, you pick them up from the hotel in the morning, load them into a 9-seater minibus, and then they all strap in and obviously think you're going to be doing 10, 15 miles an hour down an A road, and you're doing 60 miles an hour like you're on tarmac, because the tyres technology has moved on since I was certainly a kid over there. And now, yeah, and then customers get to the lake, they already think it's unreal because the minibus is doing 60 miles an hour, whereas in England, it'd be doing 6. Then they get into the Evo or the Cayman, which is on a slightly different studded tyre to the rest of the fleet. So they're on a Lappy, which is a more aggressive spike. And yeah, the Evo would be doing 90 to 100 miles an hour down a straight and stopping and turning, not quite like it's on tarmac, more like a loose gravel. It's a very strange sensation to understand that, yeah, like you say, you get in the car nearly falling over, and then you're suddenly doing ridiculous speeds and not crashing, or hopefully not crashing.
Kev, you were talking about people coming from the airport. Tell us about the first time you met Mr. Hogland coming back from the airport.
Tell that, and I'd like to also cover a little bit of when we first went out with Conor, because that's a great story as well.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
yeah, meeting John Hogland, and Conor will relate to this experience, because anybody's first time to be with somebody that can drive a car on studded tires on ice. You come from the UK experience of, as you say, you're doing 6 miles an hour on a slippy road, and there's probably people parked up and worrying about, oh, we're all going to die and everybody's going to crash, and you know, and people do, because the conditions seem so horrific. So that's what's imprinted in your brain. You know, you can't, even with the most aggressive, confident driving in England, you can't drive. You know, it's just against all physics to drive fast on ice. Whereas in Norway, the Scandinavian countries, especially they have special tires, really soft compound. They don't go hard in freezing conditions, and they have studded tires to cut through the ice. But when you don't know that, you jump in a car and all your pre-thoughts of, well, this is just like England, it's mind-blowing. You can't put into terms what that difference is, especially when you're a competition driver, because you think you understand what a car's grip levels are, and then then it's something vastly different than you can ever imagine. Mix into that one of the world's best drivers, John Hoagland, and I certainly think on his day he is and has been the world's best driver on ice and snow. I don't think anybody would question that. Anu Mikla, anybody, they all know how good he was. And from that point of view, John Hoagland picked us, me and Simon and Warren, up from the airport when we first landed in his Skoda Estelle. We jumped in the car. He set off down the motorway, first, second, third gear, up to 60, 70 mile an hour, came to a traffic light crossroads and a 4-lane carriageway. And I mean, this is so horrific to me. I still remember it like it was yesterday, and it's 30 odd years ago. And he somehow put the car sideways, slid a little bit, went, just thought we're all going to die. We've got to go through this junction. And somehow we managed to stop the car in less than 100 yards. And it was an unbelievable bit of car control. Later on, I began to understand what he was actually doing and how he was getting the grip off the ice and looking for the ice and placing the car in the ruts and then out of the ruts so the studs would work. But first time I ever experienced that. And then the nice bit I go with that story is, then you start to think, well, maybe John's just like, I mean, he's driving like the biggest hooligan I've ever seen, but he's really calm in the car. He's talking to us, chatting while we're all frightened to death. This is clearly no big deal to him. So we start to think, well, maybe, we've done 50 odd miles to get to our hotel. Maybe the man's just a god. And this is easy for him, and maybe we're going to be able to learn to do this, and maybe we're not on the ragged edge in the way that I think we are. And we pulled up into the hotel, slowed from 40, turned into where we were going to park, got down to about 6 miles an hour, maybe 5. And the next thing is he couldn't quite stop the car in time, and we ran into the hotel. We crashed into the wall of the hotel. So it's like, so in actual fact, John Hoagland, back in those days, every time he got in the car, whether he shut the door, accelerated, braked, anything he did in a car was on the limit. And you didn't know it being in with him, but if he was parking it up, it was still on the limit of traction and everything he ever did. And we quickly learned to do that. And Conor will be able to relate to this because the ice lake is one thing, but actually when we first, and this is where I'm going back to, when I first said, look, the best experience I've ever had in rallying by far is this experience I've had of being in and around ice lakes. It's brilliant for serious tuition. If you want to be a world champion, you've got to do it. If you just want to enjoy yourself and have fun, it's the best fun ever if you're interested in cars and adventure. So that side of it's great. Myself and Pat started the Peugeot Challenge. Well, the first obvious thing for me, Pat had never been to Sweden before. He didn't know about the ice, but it was like, this is what we've got to do, Pat. We've got to take the winners of this Clubman Championship. We've got modest incomes, but we can give them an experience of a lifetime. And the best thing we could ever do is take them to Sweden. They didn't understand why we were pushing so hard. Pat bought into the concept, thought it was great. He could take his son. Conor could come along as a young kid, and his family, in fact. So everybody went with the Flyns. But we got a bunch of people together to go from the Peugeot Challenge, which is about 15 of us. And just like when we'd first gone there, just getting there was such an achievement. People were crashing on the way there on the road. They're totally unskilled for the circumstances. We were towing people out of ditches. And I don't think I've ever been on a road journey where somebody hasn't crashed to get to the lake in the first place. And I'd also say I've never done a trip where people don't crash on the way home. And that's a massive difference. So as cocky as anybody is, as good as they think they are as drivers, they won't even get to the venue. And that's just a fact. You get too carried away. You don't understand what you're doing. A bit like skiing, ultimately, if you don't have the balance, you can't stand up on the skis. And, learning to ski will put the best, most balanced person who's never done it before on their arse. It's only when you've got the balance and the skill, you understand what you're doing, that you can ski. And that's the same with ice driving. But over to Conor to think what his first experience was.
So I think, was it 2003, Kev? Or was it maybe 2002? One of them years, definitely. Yes, so like I say, I got picked up. Kev had like a Jewish gold Civic, of all things. And everyone assumed that you went on a knobbly gravel tyre instead of a road tyre, because obviously that would give more grip, but it was wrong. But I still remember being sat and Dad double belted me in the back of the Civic. So I had both side belts on, and I don't know what speeds we were doing, but down like a back B road was doing high speeds on a car that couldn't even get out the car park from the hotel we left that morning. And yes, that was my first experience, was Dad and Kev. Dad just sat giggling like an absolute child. And Kev obviously got like you said about John, he was quite calm and relaxed, but everything around him wasn't calm and relaxed. And then yeah, we arrived at the lake and actually got sort of tyres fitted, and then it did make a difference, but the car control and, like Kev says, balance and everything like that still had to come. So even though now you've got the tyres that are suitable for the job, you still were crashing left, right, and centre, and because on the ice, if you make a millimetre mistake, it actually exaggerates it 10, 20 times, rather than on tarmac, you can get away with stuff. And obviously snow isn't very forgiving. It's forgiving to bodywork, but you do get stuck in it quite a lot. So,
Well, tell me about,
Your
you
body.
must see a vast improvement throughout the weekend when you see these people coming along. Even
yeah,
if you're not a very good driver to start with, I mean, it must really be quite encouraging. You know, when you finish your course and somebody's going a lot quicker. Eh?
yeah, because our customers now, obviously, when we first started it, before I even had a license, was everyone around me was some form of rally race or a good driver. Whereas obviously now we have literally people that come for a stag do, they come for just because the husband fancied a go in a Evo rally car on a frozen ice lake, because what a cool thing to do. So these people have never had any experience other than driving their normal road car to and from work and the shops, and they get there and they struggle, and we get in and out with them, and obviously give them some pointers, and they get towards the end of the 2 days, 3 days, whatever they're doing, they are then fully actually like power sliding a car around the corner. And I wouldn't say maybe going quite as far as left foot braking, but we do try and teach different things. And I have many people, when they get home, if they live somewhere fairly snowy in the UK and they get back in March and they've had snow, they said like the difference it makes for English driving, as well as the fun factor, is amazing, but it also does benefit all round.
Ev, how did it develop you?
Let me just play you a video of young Connor, aged 12 years old.
At just 12 years old, it's hard to imagine anyone having the skill and ability to be recognised as a future world champion. But Manchester United signed the 12-year-old David Beckham because they could see the potential. Here we can see Connor undergoing some intensive coaching with 3 times British Lady Rally champion Barbara Armstrong and racing superstar Michael Burgess. The young Flynn is now widely recognised as Britain's best hope of producing a future world rally champion. At this stage in his career, Connor is simply streets ahead of the competition. With the backing from his family, rally training professionals, and even the sport's governing body, there is no doubt of Connor's bright future.
So, Kev, tell me, how did that develop you as a driver after your first visit to the ice school?
Development it's unrivaled. I will split it into 2, maybe 3 parts. First of all, it's really good fun, and I believe if you want to get good at anything, you've got to enjoy it. There's many books out there about sports performance saying that if you want to be outstanding in your sport, you need to do 10,000 hours of meaningful practice. When you go to the ice lake, you can clock up 8 hours, if not more, per day. To try and get that amount of seat time in the UK is just impossible. So it's too expensive, and meaningful practice time on ice is quite gentle on the car comparatively. So you can do it. You can get seat time and you can get big time. So if you spend big time behind the seat, you can learn all sorts about car control. Now, car control is not everything. Don't make you world champion, but it gives you a flying start. So practicing those basic skills will help you for life. And I'm sure that I haven't been to an ice lake for maybe 15 years. I could probably jump in a car tomorrow, just like a skier, and off I go. You know, I'll be pretty good at it. And it's a skill that is imprinted in your brain. And you know, it's like learning to ski or riding a bike. Literally, you don't know what to do. You learn to do it, and then it's in you forever. And you need it as a basic skill for tuition. The other side of it is how you interact and how you build a learning environment around you. There's hardly any similar circumstance where you can go with, say, a group of friends, 3, 4, 5, 10 of you, in sometimes we were doing with the Peugeot Championships, where you're all friendly enough to share a car and put yourself back to back. So I used to relate it towards when myself, Simon Davison and Warren Hunt were playing squash together. And actually them two played golf together. And as good friends, they accelerated their learning to become really competent at golf. Maybe not world champions, but good at it. And the same thing of playing squash, maybe not world champions, but good at it because they had a brilliant learning environment. They're really competitively minded, and they had people to share that with. And that's the environment that you need. So yeah, it's on ice and snow, but actually, from Conor's experience, the opportunity to learn will be unbelievable. He's been doing it since he was 12 years old. Imagine the thousands of hours he's put into not being good at it himself, and I'm sure he's still amazing, but the ability to be able to pass on that experience through all the things he's seen, facilitating other people learning. There's no better environment. You know, at one point when I was a full-time professional rally instructor, I was probably tutoring 1,000 people a year doing different school experiences. And with them, I was probably spending 30 minutes a day doing it. So you add those up in hours and think of all the people and all the experience that I've sat with. I've sat with world champions at 17. I've sat with Burnsy when he was world champion. I know what the difference is. I can tutor to a really high level. But I can tell you there's no better environment to be learning in than the positive environment that Conor can put together, because one, the opportunity of the ice, but the other one is he comes from a background of excellence in learning, and it's unrivaled.
Conor, that kind of leads me to, I mean, you were 12 years old. Do you ever get juniors coming across, or is that something that could happen in the future?
We have a few juniors come over. Jake Hill, who's obviously racing in touring cars, he coaches a few juniors, so he brings them over. And I know that's racing and not rallying, but they just say that their wet level goes through the roof. Their confidence in the wet, obviously, they're in Ginetta juniors and the car moving around underneath them to a racing driver on slicks is obviously a no-go zone. You don't slide or drift a race car. You use the aero, and whereas obviously when it's wet, that pretty much all goes out the window. You got obviously different lines and everything. So this really changes their wet driving skills to ridiculous. They said that it just helps them no end, and the confidence they have now in the car moving around that they never had before. But yeah, as juniors, it's amazing because, as I found, the younger you are, I think the easier it is to learn stuff.
What range of cars, from the smallest to the biggest, would you say you have? Because there'll be a junior watching this, wanting to do it perhaps.
Yeah, so we've got Fiesta STs, obviously front wheel drive, for anyone doing any front wheel drive stuff. Then we've got some 6-cylinder BMW compacts, which are quite a basic car, just totally standard, just with sort of tyres on. And then obviously you go up more, obviously then you've got Cayman S's with obviously diffs and everything, big brakes on them. And obviously then the Group N rally cars have got obviously Proflex dampers, and yeah, so we've got a various range of cars.
What kind of length of stages are we talking here, Conor?
We now have 6 different parts. So we've got 2 massive ovals, which is if I'm jumping into a car that I've never driven before, so a customer's car's turned up and they want me to drive it, that is the first place I take it, is on the big oval, because you've got 25 meters width of track, so you can do pretty much what you want and learn within 2 corners, whether it's understeer, oversteer, hard work, and it responds to left foot braking really well. So they've got two massive ovals which have got like slaloms down them, two big drift circles, so you can like link them or just try and hold a car. So we do a little thing as a fun is to you can't move the steering wheel. So the car's in a drift going round and round in a circle, and the only way you can physically change the angle is on the throttle. And then obviously then you do it the other way where you then keep the throttle steady and change the steering. And obviously them things make a massive difference to different styles of learning and put in perspective of different ways to do stuff, because everyone thinks, especially in Sweden, if you're doing 30 miles an hour into a 90 left, obviously on tarmac, you'd never need to brake. You just turn in, the car would turn in, no drama, carry on. Even in Sweden, you have to brake or lift. You can't just turn in on throttle because the car will just sort of stay straight on. So even if you're going low speed, you still have to brake, but it just teaches people like about obviously weight transfer, and yeah, it's just an unlimited learning curve of things. And then we've got an inner track which is maybe maximum speed of 45 miles an hour, but really tight, technical, twisty. And then we've got the outer track, which is about 3.2 kilometers long, and that's the faster tracks. That's got like big sweeping corners, like 6 or 7 S bends all linked together. So if you're drifting or wanting to get from apex to apex, you're carrying decent speed and obviously trying to hit apexes or.
So if there is a junior watching this, Conor, and he's shouting to his dad that he wants to do it, how much would his dad have to fork out in real terms?
Roughly, you can do it as cheap as you want. So the world of Airbnbs helped us massively now, because you can go and get 4 people in Airbnb for £60 a night, 25 minutes away from where the lake is. There's nothing there, just your Airbnb. You've got to travel every night for dinner and stuff, but it really is cheap. I booked flights the other day for £35 return. So if you hire a car, you're looking at about £150, £200 for sort of 4-day hire. Obviously, 4 people's worth of flights, 35-ish pound a flight, and then obviously the Airbnb at £60 a night. You can do it really cheap that way, and then obviously then the cars vary between 500 and up to £1,500 for the day. The more premium car you go, obviously the bigger the spikes, tyres are, and you get a lot of free tuition in the Group N rally cars and the Cayman, whereas in the lower cars you get like a basic tuition as part of the package, and then obviously you upgrade to one-to-one tuition if you want more.
I think that's really great value, Kev.
On to my ideal, and really the reason for the podcast is my son's now 14. Hopefully this week I'll be buying him a rally car, which is in an auction, which by the time this podcast is out probably won't harm me. So with a bit of luck, we'll buy the Matthewson's 1000cc car. Yeah, it's being televised, so that's quite exciting. But with the whole intention of, from my point of view, I'd enjoy the drive out there. So that's one thing I'd like to ask Conor about. It's possible to take your car. It's not for the faint-hearted. If it's not, if you've, I wouldn't even recommend doing it. I'll let Conor say it, but I've never been with a group of people that haven't crashed on the way there. So unless you're competent, I just wouldn't do it. But I think I'm probably experienced enough to be able to do that. I've done it a few times before, and I'd quite like the adventure of going out in a car. And with that in mind, I will be offering it to the UK. Well, actually, anybody in 1000cc junior car that wants to come and experience ice driving, if we can find the places and we can work something out with Conor. I'm going there for a few days this year. I'm working as well with Conor, but we're going to do something. And if anybody's got a junior driver from, I dare say Conor's going to say from 12, but really it's about how tall they are and can they reach the steering wheel and physically able to drive. There is no age restriction to that. I mean, my son's 14, but he's 6'3", so he's no problem. I remember when Conor was
into the Cayman.
well, yeah. To be fair, he's got no limit to that, because we'll know that the nice thing with the ice driving, if you're not competent, you don't go anywhere. So if you're aggressive and you don't know what you're doing, you just don't move. You stay still. So you can only build speed when you've got skills. But with that, there's no age barrier, but there is a size and a physical ability. And bringing it back to when Conor first did it, the effort that we had to go pushing cushions underneath him and pushing him forward and just having the arm strength. I remember you being so tired, Conor, that you couldn't turn the steering.
Yeah.
You know, the steering wheel was massive for you, and you got tired really quickly, as kids would, because the atmosphere out there, you know, the cold, it's draining. So that's the biggest thing I'd say. It's not. I'm sure Conor's going to say the same thing. But anybody thinking of signing up and coming out for a week, if they feel adventurous, they could probably come with me on a ferry. But the easiest way is to jump on an aeroplane and share a car when you're out there. So me and Zach are going to have an adventure, and that's going to be super exciting for me. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And hopefully we'll encourage some more juniors. A few years ago, Connor's maybe even forgot, but a few years ago, the F1000 UK Championship did take a bunch of juniors out, which included Chris Ingram and Veselio.
Aaron Doobie, Aaron McClure. There was, I can't remember who else come. There's 5 or 6 of them, I think.
They did share cars at the time. So, and anyway, you know, Chris has done all right out of it. So
yeah,
there is, you know, as a serious learning thing, you've got to do it, but it's just as a lifetime thing. What an opportunity to give to anybody. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Yeah, and we're talking about the juniors, but it seems to me that anybody can do it. You know, and it sounds fantastic. I mean, we're never too old to learn how to drive in the British roads. That's for sure. When are you back out there, Conor?
I leave on the 18th of January, and we officially open on the 25th of Jan to the 27th of Feb this year is our season. We've got a relatively short season because of weather. Currently, the lake's 30 centimetres deep and you can drive on it. But in the last 10 years, that has never, ever happened to me, that before Christmas, I've been having a phone call with the farmer who obviously ploughs the lake and sorts the lake out for me before I get there, that he's physically sat on the lake in his car. Normally it's sort of mid-Jan. I'm getting geared up, ready to leave to go over there, and he's ringing me saying, I've ploughed your tracks. Here's the GPS. Do you want anything changing? Whereas actually now he's already sent me the GPS, and which is just crazy. So maybe global warming isn't happening as fast as we think, and actually we can start to extend the season.
So your lad is going to be driving at race driving school, Kev, before he's done a competitive event.
I mean, that's the funny thing about this. Skills, when they're learnt in a nice, relaxed, fun environment, are skills for life. That is of any age. Like Conor, you know, he's making a living out of this, and that's brilliant. Actual competition isn't for everybody for lots of reasons, and usually money. But
Yeah.
you know, the competition itself is a different level. But this is a skill for life, as far as I'm concerned. It's the equivalent to swimming. It'll probably save lives, and it's the experience is just a fantastic thing to share. So yeah, whether that's a stag do, you know, some of the tutors out there that I know, I've got friends who are professional tutors and they mentor in different race drivers, rally drivers. You know, they need to go out there and spend time with their young proteges. There's nothing better. Even championship organisers, you know, like I say, we did it as a championship. We gave the opportunity for people to come out. We facilitated that for the winners in the championship. What an experience, you know, and everybody in that championship, with Pat's championship, we stayed really good, close friends for, you know, 10 years, and it would have continued forever. So because there was really good friendships built, and that had a lot to do with what was going on, you know, with Pat in particular, facilitating lifetime, you know, once in a lifetime experiences out in Sweden. So yeah, I couldn't sing the praises enough of the opportunity that's there. Anybody watching this, if they've got to the end of it, they're 50-50 ongoing, bring Conor immediately, because places will be full.
Do you know, I watched a thing from a nice driving school from 2007, Conor, and it was a green 205. I actually rolled on a lake. I thought, is that possible? That must be a record. I've never heard of that.
That is, nothing's never impossible, but it's pretty much impossible. You're not really carrying the speed that you do obviously in a forest or tarmac. 2, you've not got no ditches or any ledges, ploughed fields, etc., to tip you over, and you don't physically have the grip on the tyres to physically obviously dig in and roll. So yeah, it's never officially happened to us. But yeah, I'd say it's 99% impossible just purely because I think you'd have to be doing such big speeds that you physically couldn't actually get to them speeds just because of it's just not possible on the slippy conditions to get to the speed that you'd need to roll.
So have you had any big names lately or in the last couple of years, or any booked up for this time? Or
no, Jake Hill's probably one of the biggest names we have. He comes back every year, brings, like I say, his juniors and sponsors and customers over. No, to be fair, the business sort of changed. I think that's what me and Kev now also wanted to bring it back to sort of motorsport people as well, because I don't know if motorsport people have sort of forgotten about the fact that you can go and do it and still go and do it on a budget rather than sort of 5-6 grand a day like some other places are charging. Admittedly, you're in GT3 RS Porsches and stuff, but reality is our 300 horsepower Cayman is plenty more than you'd ever need, in fact.
we're talking about juniors and adults, and just the life skills you can learn on this, driving skills for life. But you mentioned sponsors. What a great thing for corporate weekend.
Yeah.
For your sponsors, I think that's terrific, Conor.
Yeah, because it's very much about the driving, but the scenery is amazing. You drive down like stunning mountain roads, obviously with snow-covered trees, lakes everywhere. It's a magical place to be, not just because you're driving cars around a frozen ice lake with your friends. It's just the whole thing is a magical experience, and the food's amazing, and Northern Lights 2 or 3 times a week you see, and just so it's like as a package, I think it's pretty up there for a lifetime experience that everybody 100% should do at least once. And we've had people that started in an old Volvo 240 with us 9-10 years ago and still religiously come back and do 3 days a season, and just have upgraded with us as we've upgraded cars and things. But they just come back and they just said we don't know what we'd do with our February if we didn't come over to Sweden every year. And it just sort of sets them up for their year of racing. Or
I mean, the proof's in the pudding, Kev, right? I mean, if you look at the people that you've been over with that have went on to greater things, and I was lucky enough to interview John Hogland a few years ago, and he was saying he's top world champions and stuff like that. These will definitely progress your ability.
Yeah, 100%. It can't not, because like Kev said, if you are 7,000 revs and drop the clutch to set off, you'll just wheel spin and get stuck even more. So you've got to, you'd just have a crash every 30 seconds if you didn't increase your skills and just the confidence it gives you in a car moving around and positioning a car, because everything happens slower speed. So on a tarmac event, you feel like you're doing 100 mile an hour straight away, and if you crash, it's going to be a big crash. It might end your season because it's a 20 grand bill if you've crashed into the Armco and rolled. Whereas here, realistically, you might crack a bumper, and that's sort of the max damage you do. So it's the confidence you gain from actually crashing, because you understand why you've crashed, because you can do it 10 times and not actually cost you anything.
I think it's brilliant, Conor.
Yeah.
I think it's terrific, and you can't not improve. That's the thing about it.
Yeah.
You're going to be better over by just doing it for a grand and a bit. See, I don't know what it's going to cost, but for the price of a couple of single venue rallies, you're going to come back a better driver.
Yeah, 100%. And like Kev says, when I was younger doing it, as in I wasn't running it as a business, I was going out to learn and enjoy. I'd jump in with Kev and watch like intensely what he was doing, and then it might just be something like he was left foot braking slightly different to what I was doing, or he was something, and then you'd get back in your car and you would just not care about anything else other than just that one little section that Kev was doing loads better. So then obviously that then just brought that level on, and then that opened up the next level of the stages, and then obviously I'd get in with like Michael Vergers, who obviously was racing, and he'd also do something totally different to someone from rallying, and you'd be like, no, that can't work. That's wrong. But the car would go around the corner, so you'd be like, okay. So you'd watch more, and just he would have a totally different driving style, as everyone has a totally different driving style. But he'd be like one end, and we'd be the other end as rally and race, and yeah, just watching people is as good as actually the driving time a lot of the time. So if juniors were coming, they could have 2 or 3 in a car and just learn off each other, rotate every 15 minutes and watch what the one junior's doing, the other 2 can be watching. And like Kev says, it just like excels your learning curve by thousands, because the stupid mistakes you make trying to do everything yourself, you miss out because you've watched someone else make that mistake for you.
It's a no-brainer. For the price of a couple of single venues, you're going to come back and improve driver. Is it only like a budget thing you do, or do you do different packages, Conor?
Yeah, we do anything from an Airbnb all the way up to 5-star spa hotels. We have obviously anything from, like I say, got Cayman S's, Group N rally cars, which obviously has our most expensive premiums of the fleet. We do ice karting, we do skidoos, we can organise night driving. So pretty much all our cars now have got light bars on them. So you come off the lake from your day session, you have a cup of tea, whilst we go and mess around and turn around the tracks and tidy them up. You come back out, you do some night driving, which obviously just the experience is totally different. So even though you've done probably 150 laps that day off the track, when it comes to night, it's a totally different track again. And then we have purposely built now a log cabin with a big fire in it. So you can have tea, coffee and moose burgers in there after your night driving as well. And then obviously, hopefully see Northern Lights and things like that too. So as a complete package, yeah, we can cater for pretty much anyone and anything.
Sounds fantastic. So, Kev, who, if anybody's wanting to do this, take it up, I mean, who do they contact?
Contact Conor, because it's Ice Drive Sweden. It's all over the internet. But also, if there's a junior out there that is interested to get involved with what we're doing with Zach, because I'm going, that'd be great. You can contact me directly. And yeah, that'd be brilliant to get people together. Maybe Bob, you could do that. And I'll quickly say, because Conor didn't, there are many other small activities like ice karting out there and skidoo driving and all sorts of different things that maybe if we go as a group, we could facilitate that together. So that could be a stag do, but if it's the juniors, maybe we can do something really special. Very minimum, share the car and share the experience of learning, which I think is fantastic. And I might even consider looking after a group of juniors if that made things better, because time off work isn't for everybody. And neither is time off school, but we're masters at being able to get around that, aren't we, Conor? Because he's been going for as a junior with time off school about 5 years. Anyway, that's the end of that. Thanks very much, Bob. I mean, hopefully you could maybe facilitate a little bit of this in Scotland. Everybody's welcome. It'd be nice to think that a group from Scotland of rally drivers, young or old, would come along and get involved. I'll let you have the final word, Bob, because you were the guest on this one. But thanks everybody for listening. See you in Sweden.
Thanks. I'd just like to thank both you guys for putting it out there. I've certainly learned quite a bit there, and I wish you all the best. I wish your lad all the best, Kev, this year, and I wish you all the best in the future, Conor, with your Ice Drive Sweden.
Thanks
for watching, everyone.